Pledge of allegiance.
And to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. All right, our first thing tonight is Scholastic Art Award winners. So I thought we'd do is, if you would stand up and introduce yourselves. And then, tell us, kind of the concept of your art, and then we'll take a break and we'll walk across the hall and take a look. Okay? Anyone want?
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for having us tonight, and thank you to all of you for coming. I'm Miss Jillian Barnes. You probably know me by now, most of you. So this is the 9th year that we've done Scholastic Art Awards. It's a competition open to all students in grades 7 through 12th grade, as long as you're 13. And they are able to submit work that they complete at home, that they do in school. There's no limit to the amount of work they submit, any medium goes. And they send it to a contest, and then the winners are selected. We have here tonight some gold, silver, and honorable mention winners. The work that was gold and silver is currently still at New Paltz at the show. It's up for about the month of February, and for any of those that are at the show, we did a print, so there's still another version of it in the other room, so you can see all of our winners. And then any of the golds go on to the next level. So anyone that has won a gold award will go and get judged, and maybe right now this is the regionals, and then it would go to nationals. This is a very busy time for us. So right now we just also wrapped up like the Kent Art Show that we have in Kent, Connecticut, and that one's just high school. And then when you go around at the tables, there's some flyers for our next show, which is the one at the library, and that one is pre-K to 8. So we have a lot of great artists here, and I thank you guys for coming. We have a lot of good things going on in the art department and a lot of shows, so you can come out and see some of the work also in a couple of our shows. And there's a poster also of all the shows that we have for the rest of the year. So that's just a little intro. Who wants to go next? Do you want to just stand by your work? They might be more comfortable just like when you go in there. Right? You guys
So can I
not stand up?
I'm just gonna announce all of the winners and then they can tell about their art pieces, because there are some kiddos who aren't here, but they might be watching, so I just want them to know that we did acknowledge them. So we have Lachlan Kelly here, and he's a gold key winner, also Sophie Leggero. And we have Madison and Michael Guzman Enriquez, both gold key winners. We have Adriana Chowdhury, a silver key winner, Sophie Stalker, a silver key winner, Sophia Hardy, silver key, Miranda Moffett, silver key, Valentina Hurtado, silver key, Dylan Vasquez, with 2 silver keys, Madison Guzman Enriquez, also a silver key, so gold and silver. Madalena LaRusso, honorable mention, Tamsin Doyle, honorable mention. Lachlan Kelly, also an honorable mention. Sophie Ledoux, honorable mention. Sophia Hardy, an honorable mention. Michaela Marchant, honorable mention. Avery Massaro, honorable mention. And Moses Guzman Enriquez, 3 honorable mentions. So congratulations to all of them.
So why don't we take, well, as long as it takes, we'll I guess we'll pause the recording. And once you guys go find your work, and we'll come over up here. Okay?
I just wanted to make sure that once I found
7 o'clock at night and sitting through the boring opening of the meeting and all that good stuff is tough. I know you probably got things to do at home, so we really appreciate it. And we're just incredibly proud of the Millbrook Arts across the board. And you guys make us look so good when you're out in public and they see Millbrook. And, you know, they're thinking this is some major art school and it's just the art district. So you guys have done a phenomenal job, done a great job of making Millbrook look better and better every time you win or even place in these things. So thank you so much for coming out. I don't know if anyone on the board wants to say anything. The other thing, we're being recorded right now. Did you want to?
Yeah, so, this is exciting. It was awesome to go over there and see the talents of our students. I'm always amazed. I always say I can't draw a straight line with a ruler, so it's very impressive for me to see, even some of our young students doing really amazing stuff. Actually, coming up, starting March 7th through March 22nd, there will be an art blast featuring artwork from our pre-K students through 8th grade and other students from the area from MECAC and also Dutchess Day School, with an artist reception on March 7th from 4 to 6 p.m. So anyone who wasn't able to join us this evening and see some of this work, some of it will be featured at the library during the art blast. So congratulations to all of our students who had submissions and especially those who won too. It's very exciting.
Thank you all so much, and we appreciate it. You're welcome to stay with us to the end of the meeting if you'd like, or we can close our eyes and you can run it.
We won't
Thank
be
you all.
offended.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye, guys.
No.
All right, let's see. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll second. Thank you.
Anything anyone wants to talk about, has concerns, comments, wants pulled, from the list? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any against? Very good. President and Vice President report, I really have nothing, to report on this time. Chris?
No, I mean, we're gonna get into the capital projects.
All right. Move on to the superintendent's report.
So first, I would like to introduce the newest Millbrook Blazer, Ben Kafka. He's sitting right here in the front row.
Hey.
Ben is our new teacher at Elm Drive. He took over for the vacancy left by Mr. Morrow's departure. So we welcome Ben to the Millbrook community. And so far he's hit the ground running with his students. Mid-year is never easy. So reestablishing, right, classroom expectations and getting down to business. So congratulations and welcome to Millbrook.
Thank you.
So I do have a rather long report, so I'll just kind of stick around for some things. Really exciting happenings on February 18th. Thank you to Brian Irwin from the senior engineer with Discovery. Had his team come to Elm Drive to spark interest in math and science with our youngest learners. So they worked with students on a project called the Duckapult. So students were able to see an engineering project firsthand. And be able to experience some of the wonders of the STEAM curriculum. We also had the Pizza with the Pros that took place on February 19th. So that was an event for all Dim Police band members with a really high percentage of participation. And that involves some of our high school students going down and working with those students. And we appreciate the teachers, the students who participated, and the parent volunteers who helped make the event a huge success. Also, we had blue ribbon blazer ceremonies at, both Elm Drive and Alden, identifying their next, theme for the month, Alden Places being empathy. So that will be the focus throughout their building for the next month. We also had a professional development day on the 14th, where we had everything from literacy to artificial intelligence, but using it in a positive way to boost student engagement and develop study guides and provide student feedback. And also we had a bunch of different opportunities around formative assessment and enhanced student learning. There was training specifically targeting teachers in a co-taught environment and how to leverage the co-taught models for student engagement and growth. And we also had some of our non-instructional staff working on anti-discrimination and bullying laws, and including Title IX updates. As you know, the law has changed recently, so we reviewed that. Our lockdown drills in each of our buildings are up to date to stay compliant with the mandates from our state. There's a lot of information about athletics, lots of happenings in the athletic world. So spring sports are coming soon and the winter season is closing. Registration on Family ID is open, so make sure if your child is interested in participating that you are on there and you are registering. We had a really successful merger for the wrestling club with Weebatuck, so that was a really exciting opportunity for 5 of our students and several of theirs as well. So we're hoping, like we had said, over the course of 3 years that we might be able to make that into a winter sport for our students. So exciting for those who took a chance and decided to try something new. We did just approve a merger for softball for Weebatuck due to low numbers. So our students will have an opportunity to participate on a merged team. Something that's really exciting is that Section 9 has introduced a new spring sport, flag football. So the high school students are really excited about this, and so it will run as a club this year to see about the interest. So far, it seems to be quite popular. And then we will kind of assess interest and decide if it's something that we want to make a club. One of the things, I know it's not necessarily a traditional club in this area or a traditional sport in this area, but the reality is if that's where our students' interests are and we can keep them active and engaged, that's going to be a priority for us. So we're going to measure the numbers and see if it makes sense to make it a sport in the future. Right now, it will just be a club for interest purposes. And we again will have a golf team this year for girls running in the spring. And we want to just say publicly how grateful we are for the Millbrook Golf and Tennis Club for hosting our boys team and also hosting our girls team this spring. We are very appreciative that they always work with us to, support our students in that way. We had a tall small ball on February 13th in honor of Valentine's Day, and over 100 Elm Drive students attended with their tall, whomever that was. And we wanted to thank the PTO publicly for sponsoring that. We also had some pretty exciting club opportunities coming up for Millbrook Middle School students. We had an awesome STEAM fair for the Millbrook Middle School and high school students. I have some names listed there below. Natalie El-Halafawe participated and won first place for 6th grade. Second place for 6th grade was Danielle Hennessy. For 7th grade, we had first place Leif Spafford. We had Evelyn Lisies with an honorable mention. Second place was Jake Colamello. Honorable mention, Juliana Obeso. Second place, Emma Gerster, and honorable mention, Finn Snyder. Third place, Tommy Martin, and honorable mention, Claire Zdowski. And then for 8th grade, we had Breeden Moriarty and Tamsin Doyle, and we had Dylan Vasquez. So congratulations to all of those students who participated, and also those who are the winners who will then likely go on to the Dutchess County Science Fair should they choose. And then there's also some upcoming events listed for anyone who is planning on attending.
Very good. Any questions for Caroline?
You said you were long, I'm saying. Did it go?
I thought that was long.
For sports, and I don't want anybody to get upset with me because it seems like something I have to say all the time. Have we thought about more ways to engage parents to you know, I know it's on the website, I know it's, you know, it's in the emails, I know it's on, I mean, can we use the snow day phone systems to call parents and tell them that it's happening? Have we thought about other ways we might reach out to them and, cause I just don't wanna hear, and I know it's not always, you know, it's not one person's fault, but I just don't wanna hear that, oh, I didn't know.
Right.
Um,
And I don't necessarily think that participation numbers are down. There's a ton of kids coming out for track and field. Season over season, it seems to be our biggest sport right now, sort of consistently. You know, we have students now who are playing golf instead of some other sports that they used to participate in. We now have a big interest in the flag football. We just added the opportunity for wrestling. Could we use the mass notification system? I guess my concern is I don't want people to start ignoring that from like fatigue.
no, I was just using that as an example. Is there any other way that we can reach out to the parents and make sure that, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we've been trying to put like the coaching opportunities in the newsletters and in the bulletins that go out weekly. We've been trying to put some of it out there. I mean, we'll do anything that we can, you know, the social media and whatnot. The phone system, I just do worry about because I don't want people to ignore something important because they get fatigued by, you know, non-essential calls, but I mean, we can certainly keep using social media and whatnot.
all right, very good.
I had, in addition to what Perry was saying regarding, the science fair, so I did attend and it was wonderful to see all the different grades and their projects, but for high school, we have one participant out of 252 high school students, and if we can, and we have these incredible presenters like Mr. Moriarty, you mentioned, Mr. Irwin, Mr. Rowland, who's come in to speak about engineering projects, and I think we can just get a little bit more connected to maybe have a mentorship program to help bring ideas about science projects or help them conduct a science project to have more participants, because I think it was about less than 20 participants were amazing, and I'm sure there's more out there. So to have just one of 252, if we can see what could also encourage that enrollment and participation. And second to that, I wanted to second the tall small ball because I did attend, and shout out to Mrs. O'Connell and everyone who helped set up, because tall and small, like, it was a great time.
Super cute.
Just a real quick piggyback on what Dina said, regarding science fair for high school. Well, even middle, but, I know our advisors are middle school. I'm wondering if it would change things if perhaps there was an
Mrs. Barnes
advisor.
Does teach at the high school.
Oh, okay. Or perhaps if the engineering, I know this year the engineering day for middle came after the science fair, but maybe having the engineers come in prior to sort of get them excited about pairing engineering and then taking on a science fair project and maybe mentoring a little bit. I know that down at Alden, the scientists from Cary come in after the children choose their topic and then help them think about their method. I don't know. I know kids get busier and busier as they get older, but the high school students are also the most equipped to do a science fair project. I think. I'll stop.
Anything else? No. Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, right.
All right, so just some updates from People Personnel Services. Number one, I just want to officially welcome Danielle Leonardi in her new role as PPS administrative assistant, since taking on this role. She really has worked, and hit the ground running to learn the responsibilities that her role entails. So we're very excited to have her here, in this new capacity. Obviously, she's a known entity to the district and, again, just has really been an asset since starting, to the PPS office in support of our students and their families, and has really done everything she could to make this transition seamless in a very hectic time of year for PPS. So a big thank you to Danielle and just an official welcome to her. Moving on to the hecticness of this time, the PPS office and all relevant building level staff have officially kicked off the annual review season. And so at this point, we are actually kind of wrapping up our meetings at both the middle and high school level. We've held and conducted the majority of those meetings. Throughout the remainder of this week, we will kind of be finishing those up, and then a few straggling meetings maybe that are leading into March due to, you know, some weather cancellations that have happened and some unavoidable things of that nature. But overall, I just want to thank families because we've had some really successful meetings at both the middle and high school in preparation of 25-26 school year for our students. And as we look ahead, we will be holding our Alden Place meetings in the month of March. So coming up next week, we're starting those, and then Elm Drive will be happening in April. So just for any families that are listening, if there are any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to the PPS office or a staff member or your child's case manager at their school for any questions with regard to that. This past week, 2 weeks, I had the opportunity to collaborate with Mrs. O'Connell and some staff down at Elm Drive to further support some integration opportunities for our students in the 811 program at Elm to just give them more access to their peers and different levels of access throughout the building. So that has been really good work and really nice to see that, you know, starting to be successful for some of these kids. Looking at some professional Superintendent Hernandez has expressed, we had our superintendent's conference day on February 14th. On that day, we had Lisa Hamill come back to work with more of our co-teaching pairs at an elementary and secondary level. Additionally, Ms. Pulver, our school psychologist in place, presented to the other school psychologists on developing executive functioning skills in mandated counseling sessions based on the training that she was able to attend earlier this year. And they really, you know, were receptive to that turnkeying of that information. And Ms. Borberzak was actually able to kind of implement some of what she learned in that training in an annual review meeting we had this past, you know, week or so. So that was really nice to see that they're learning from one another. Looking ahead to our March 14th Superintendent's Conference Day, Dr. Watkins and I have been planning together to bring our CPR first aid AED trainer back to return and provide some training to some additional staff members. So we're looking forward to that. And then earlier this year, I partnered with some PBS directors in Pine Plains, Red Hook, and Rhinebeck to include our ENL teachers in their self-created ENL roundtable meetings that they hold throughout the year. Thus far, our teachers have traveled both to Pine Plains and Red Hook to participate in further professional development alongside their peers, and Millbrook is happy to be hosting the next roundtable meeting at our March 14th Superintendent's Conference Day. And then finally on April 3rd, Jennifer Oberzak and I are going to be attending a conference at PNW BOCES to learn more about connecting individuals with disabilities to some adult services as they then move on from us post-secondary. And go ahead, if you guys have any questions.
Questions?
I have a question. And this might, Caroline may have to chime in here. So do you know how many or what percentage of our staff are CPR first aid trained?
Oh.
I know, I'm.
No, I can,
Approximately to.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can tell you that we have people trained in every building. We've had the majority of our teacher aides, custodial staff administrators trained in CPR and first aid. We're also sending a couple of staff members for the train the trainer sessions so that they will be trained to then start sort of a normal rotation of getting people through the training. Because it's very difficult because we can only have 6 people per session. Right, so it's kind of a time thing, like we can bring the folks in to do the training, but you can only train 6 people at a time, so it's like very, you know, there's very small groups that we can actually get through the training at once. So we're figuring if we can get a couple of people here trained as trainers, we can move through our
Right.
staff on more of a rotational basis.
Right. I'm sure that, I mean, I just want to commend you all because I'm thinking that we probably have more people trained than you legally need.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
that's-
yeah, yeah.
that's
yeah,
more.
yeah.
Right, that's fantastic.
more.
I was just wondering,
And I mean, I could minimally say in just the last year since our March 11th superintendent's conference day last year, we have gotten at least 32 people trained in the district, and that includes what Caroline was saying, you know, a lot of our TAs and As,
Right.
all of our administrative staff, the facilities
business office.
members, business office staff, other district
Fantastic.
office level staff. So, you know, that's what we've been able to provide training to, in addition to the training that Mr. Hamel, sets up for coaches and things of that nature, which obviously then kind of sometimes overlap to, right, coach's teacher and
right.
things like that. So, we do have a good portion of our staff, and as, Caroline has expressed, right, that is kind of spread throughout all 4
All 4 buildings.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I had a question, please. Just curious, why don't we send all the school psychologists, like, for example, the training that Ms. Palmer went, she brought back that, why don't all of them?
So it was an opportunity presented to all of them, but also there is cost associated with it. And so to have, you know, one person go and then again, be able to bring that back and turn key information to their team members, provide them the resources is something we always look to kind of do as well. And additionally, sometimes, right, like Ms. Oberzak, for example, the training happened while she was doing annual reviews, so she'd be unable scheduling wise to go. And things like that. We also, with only having 4 school psychologists, don't necessarily always want to send all of that level of support staff out at one time when we can avoid it. So that obviously if there was, you know, any sort of crisis going on with one of our students, we can, right, provide support. So, they are very good as a team of, you know, I'm out today for, you know, whatever reason, whether I'm out of training or I'm out sick and there is an issue coming up at Alden Place, right? Ms. Patron, Ms. Oberzak, Mr. Lavity can go down and report there to support that student in need at that time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I do have a motion to accept our motion for the financials.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments? Concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Next is to accept donation from Community Foundation of the Hudson Valley for $2,250. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Comments, questions?
Oh, I was wondering what this is exactly. Ready, set, doodle.
It's, it's something technology that is Kathy Morton and, our new tech integrator work together to do. What it is exactly, I do not
That's okay.
know,
That's okay.
but yeah, it's something from our library tech specialist.
Yeah, the document that's attached is kind of
Yeah,
messed up. I'm not sure what happened there, but we might want to repost this image file.
Why wouldn't it?
I don't know if there's,
It's the bleed through from the page before when
Oh,
you
yeah.
scan it, it just, that,
oh,
if you scroll up, It bled through I think the dark marker.
Yeah, so then
Okay.
It thought it was
It has
writing on the
another
back.
page.
Alright,
Yeah.
we might wanna just take that off and cut those last pages and put it back on. That doesn't confuse anybody when they're looking at it. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Any against? And thank you very much to Community Foundation.
Yeah.
Hudson Valley for this donation. All right, next is accept donation from the MEF. One is that part of it is to cover the 8th grade field trip, and part of it is the 7th grade Philadelphia field trip. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Comments, questions? Thank you to the MEF. Any other questions? All right, all in favor? Any against? Okay. Next, we go to old business budget, budget development update.
So, this is the budget development update, so it is still in the development stage. There will be many changes and iterations before we adopt the final budget that will go to voters in May. I say that because we have estimates of what the New York State budget is going to look like, including what our state aid will look like for the 25-26 school year. In the first iteration, we did receive 2% increase in our foundation aid, but like we have been saying, 2% increase on our foundation aid doesn't necessarily mean an increase overall, because there's been reductions in other expense-based aids in other areas. So we're actually in a deficit from where we were last year. And the cost of everything has gone up. So we are going into this with a very conservative approach to budgeting. And we hope we don't have to make some of the very difficult decisions that we are currently concerned that we may be facing, but this will be a very transparent overview and with updates at every board meeting until we adopt our final budget. Currently, we are in February on the 25th. So this is just a general budget overview. And we will have an update looking at the tax levy limit for the 25-26 school year. And again, that is that 7-part calculation that gives us how much we can levy in new taxes without a supermajority vote. From here until the month of April, essentially, we will be adjusting with every new aid run that we get, and always reminding the Board of Education that we will be adopting our school district's budget potentially before we have any finalized numbers coming from the state. And realistically speaking, even when we have finalized numbers, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what we'll actually get. They're all estimates. So we are proud of this, which is the first representation of what is known as our tripartite or 3-part budget, including the program component, administrative component, and capital component of our school district budget. So the program component, if you want to think of it, is everything to do with direct instruction to students. So anything with our instructional staff, programming, out of district placements, instructional supplies and materials, extracurriculars, transportation, anything with curriculum and planning, health services, anything that goes directly student facing. And that is always and should always be by a lot the largest portion of our budget. And so we are hovering right under the 77% mark. So 76.47% of our total budget is going directly to student-facing initiatives. Our administrative budget, which includes everything from administrators, staff and salary, central office, staff supplies, materials for school administrators and Board of Education function, anything that goes along with that, supplies, materials, any of the legal notices, any of the payroll or human resources, staff and or benefits associated, any data processing, audit services, tax collection, purchasing, any of that goes into the administrative budget. It is intended to be the smallest portion of our budget, and the best practices goal is to keep it right around 10%. And we've proudly been able to do that. We're right at 10.38% for our administrative costs. And the capital component, which is the third part of our budget, is anything to do with custodial maintenance, buildings and grounds. As you know, this has been a particularly challenging area for the district in the last couple of years. Just this past weekend, and again, there were no storms. This is just the melting now from what's accumulated on our roofs. We had 7 new leaks on Monday morning, and I believe 4 or 5 new leaks today, a couple of them being in our kitchen right above the serving line. So we've had to purchase extra diverting equipment to move water away from areas and to drain into more appropriate, safer areas. So we did, just in relation to this part of the budget, we did receive an email, which I thought was beautifully written from a middle school student who would like to speak to their principal about how frustrated they are with the condition of the middle school building and ask how they can help. So I applaud that student for really trying to, be civic minded and trying to involve themselves in a solution for the betterment of everybody. But, that is the reality that our students are dealing with. So I thought it was a beautifully written effort, and Mr. Cavello will be meeting with the young student sometime in the near future.
And just to make sure everyone that is listening now or listening to the recording, what we're talking about here is really one budget. I mean, it has 3 sections to it, but it is our operational budget. Has nothing to do with the capital projects that we've been talking about. This is keeping the lights on, keeping the doors open, keeping the kids educated. This is, I just want to make sure it's clear to everyone that this is not the capital project details that we'll talk about later. Right.
Yeah, and so this is just 2 different representations of the information that I just shared. And one of the things that I will say is that we continue to be proudest of the fact that we are maintaining this, one of the smallest administrative allocations for the district over the past 7 years. That was a goal that we had to, when myself and Ms. Garcia took over. We had a goal to bring the administrative budget down to where it should be and to maintain it there over time. So even with the increased cost of nearly everything, we've been able to do that and hover right around that 10% mark. So I'm going to pass it to Elliot, who's going to give you a deeper breakdown into expenditures and projected revenues for next year.
So on screen, you'll see an updated version of our expense budget. As you guys may remember from our previous discussions, we typically try to forecast all of our known and anticipated expenses and contingencies, and then match our revenues to that using an annual year-over-year fund balance appropriation to balance our budget. This chart is a little different than the last one you saw because we made a footnote at the bottom to share that from 2 weeks ago presentation to today, we've managed to reduce our projected expenses by approximately $667,000. So just to be fully transparent with the board, again, we're doing everything we can to manage our costs. Some of this information comes with updated rates for things that we were estimating expenses, and then we have actual figures. Some of them have been budgetary reductions or potential reductions, trying to do the best we can with very limited resources. So we wanted to share this again. If you were going to compare this to the last presentation, you'll see an overall reduction of about $750,000. So the revenues to match, you'll see again, and Caroline made a very good point that we want everybody to remember is the aid we're promised is not always the aid we're delivered. And so state aid being roughly 1/4 of our revenue and tax revenue being the other 3/4, our ability to levy taxes is significantly limited by the tax cap calculation. We are able to increase our tax levy by $707,000. You'll notice that the overall budget is going up $1.1 million. That gap has to be made up somewhere. And currently, we're making that up by appropriating $1.88 million from the current budget into next year's budget. That is a number that we've been trying to reduce year over year over the past 3 years that we've been working on this together. We just want to be very transparent with the board. That's how we match revenues to expenses. It is not long-term sustainable, but it's how we've been surviving over the past couple of years. If you recall from last board meeting, We shared that over a 12-year period, the district went, or just over, let's say, yeah, about 12-year period, we went from allocating $350,000 year over year to allocating over $1 million in the past 5 years, and significantly increasing that number over the last 3 to 4. And we're trying to trim that back from upwards of $2 million to underneath $1.5 million is our initial goal. But again, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to spend this year's money to balance next year's budget. But right now, that's the only choice we have. Did you want to talk about the?
Oh, yeah, and I just actually wanted to kind of piggyback on something that Elliot had said. If you remember that chart with the increased expenses over time, and there were a couple of years in there where the district under previous business leadership did not levy at the full amount of the tax cap calculation. They came in just under. And that really widened the gap between our needs over time and the amount of money that was being levied in taxes. So that's a problem that, you know, a choice that was made that continues to sort of come back and haunt us in this budget process, the budgeting process. So it's something that I know we are always very conscious of, is staying under the cap, but there is a danger in also not levying to the point that we can with all of the expenditures that we need and all of the prices and inflation increasing. So some of the highlights for the year-to-year changes proposed for 25-26, we did add an E&L teacher this year after this year's budget was already created due to a high spike in programmatic need at the end of August. Thankfully, we were able to find an E&L teacher, but we will need to retain that person for 25-26 in order to meet the needs of our students. So that will be an addition that happened during this year that will be carried over into next year's budget. We also have some obsolete athletic equipment, and when we are talking about athletic equipment, we could be talking about student safety. So we need to make sure that we are on top of those replacement cycles. And so that is an addition to the budget for next year in the form of goods and services. We also have reallocated some of the funds within the budget, establishing an E&L code to be able to track expenses within that program accurately, because that is how it is reported to the state based on certain subgroups of students that we serve within our total population. We've also established budget codes to expense the expenses related directly to the capital project in preparation for that reporting, and also increasing funding for building operations, maintenance, and repairs, because that's a reality that we're facing every school day. At this point in time, this is sort of where, you know, the really grim news comes. So far, we have been able to eliminate from the budget a personnel assistant that is a current vacant position. So that is through attrition. Plus, we have 3 teachers that are retiring and or resigning, which will not be replaced. Those positions will not be replaced in the 25-26 school years. At this point, we are looking at the potential and very realistic potential of having to eliminate 3 additional full-time equivalents. And those positions, we do not want to set panic anywhere until we absolutely know that that's something that we have to do. So we are leaving it as general as 3 positions at this point. And there will also be reductions to the budget in terms of software subscriptions, and understanding that we're currently looking at a budget gap of $800,000 based on the initial state aid run. And so unfortunately, the only way in which we can make up that much money is talking about positions. And fortunately, we have 4 positions that we're able to you know, do without actually involving a person in the seat, but it's going to require additional positions beyond that in order to balance the budget for next year. And then Elliot will speak about contingency budget if the voters choose not to approve this budget.
So every year we have to calculate what is called the contingency budget. It is a specifically stated in state law that the Board of Education can choose to go directly to contingency should the voters not authorize the vote on May 20th. Now, the board will have a couple of options, one of them being a revote in June, where we could propose a revised budget to the community or the same budget. We could just go back out again. Or the board can decide to not do a second vote and go directly to contingency. If the board does do a second vote in June and that vote fails, we would be forced to go directly to contingency at that point. And so there are certain legal requirements for a contingency budget, and we'd like to highlight those at this time of year, just to remind the board and anybody watching at home how we come up with these figures. So there's a couple of things that happen immediately. All equipment is removed from the budget. So as you heard us say, one of our additions to the budget was replacing obsolete athletic equipment for student safety. That legally has to come directly out in a contingency budget, as does all maintenance equipment, all technology equipment. Anything that is tagged as equipment in the budget has to be removed. Additionally, any non-union members' salary adjustments would have to come out of the budget as well. So unless somebody is protected by a collective bargaining agreement, their salary increases come off the table immediately. So those two things happen right away. There's two more factors that need to be considered. The tax levy cannot be in any excess to the previously approved tax levy, which makes sense if you think about it, right? The voters allow us, they authorize us to raise taxes by a certain percentage every year. If they don't approve us increasing their taxes, we have to go with the tax base that was last approved, which would be the current fiscal year tax base. That would be a budgetary reduction of $707,900. So we mentioned that number at the beginning of the presentation. That is our levy to levy increase. We have to reduce the budget by minimally by that figure. And we get there by removing the equipment, eliminating those increases, and any other expenses that we can identify as non-critical education-related expenses, what they call non-contingent expenses. So when we do that, we revise. The other piece of this is the admin component of the budget. We have to, so we talked about the tripartite, right? Admin, program, capital. We take capital out of the equation, and admin versus program. The admin size, the admin percentage cannot exceed the lesser of the previously approved budget or the defeated budget. So in our case, our admin portion of the budget is projected to go up 0.1% from the current fiscal year to next year. It's literally 0.1%. However, because of that, we have to limit it to last year's percentage, which further truncates our ability to budget. So in this case, our contingent budget, by taking out all of the absolute must removes and some of the things that we went back through line by line and looked at what we could do without for a year if we had. And we came up with a number that's $490,559, which means we're still short $217,000. So again, not to go full on doom and gloom, but in addition to all of the conservative things we're doing with the budget as it is, if approved, and those positions that Caroline referenced may have to be eliminated just to balance the budget that we're proposing. Should we have to go to contingency, we will have to find another $217,000 beyond those reductions just to balance out and stay at the maximum contingent budget. So with all that being said, at this point in time, as of February 25th, this is our 2025-26 proposed budget at a glance. We're looking at an expense-driven budget of $35,676,792, a budget-to-budget increase of $1.1 million or 3.19%, and directly feeding that a tax levy of $27,782,136, or a levy to levy increase of just over $707,000 or 2.61%. That is within our maximum allowable tax cap limit as dictated by the formulas given to us by the Office of the State Comptroller. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Elliot, what if, so you said even with reducing 490,559 is about 200,000 short, where do you go from there?
I don't know. I honestly, I mean, I could estimate, but this is one of those things where we sharpen our pencils, we trim everything we possibly can. I went into the superintendent's office, we kind of look at each other and go, all right, so it's already ugly. Now what? I can tell you that our largest cost centers tend to be people, and we hate saying that. But our cost to operate the plant, the highest cost centers are people and the second highest cost centers are utilities. And we can't control the utility expenses, unfortunately.
You can go to one bus route, there's all kinds of other things that could be done. You could cut all transportation, there's all kinds of things that could be proposed. But the only thing at this point in time truthfully is, the only certainty is uncertainty.
Yeah, to Mr. Shapiro's point, we do provide transportation beyond the legal basics, so, I mean, anything, to answer it very simply, Dina, anything that we do at that point is going to affect children. You know, we try to calculate that $490,000 reduction in ways that are not directly student facing. They may be student adjacent, but we try to keep it out of the classroom. I don't know that we can, between transportation and instruction, I don't know that we could keep these cuts out of our student facing, you know, classroom environment beyond that limit.
Have you done any sense of what ifs? I'm sure, I mean, I'm asking this question knowing the answer. But have you done a set of what ifs, like, what if we eliminated all sports? What if we eliminated all?
Well, actually, that's
Whatever.
not something that we can do. We're not allowed to just go out and just eliminate sports. It's not one of the things that we can just put out there as like the first thing, because it is student facing extracurricular stuff. So there are some, sort of ramifications around how we would have to go about that. But I think the thing that we need to really remind ourselves is this is if the budget doesn't pass. Even if the budget does pass without our aid runs, you know, improving from what we've looked at, we still are looking at the potential for cutting positions.
Yeah. That one of the things, and one of the things that we can help with is if we do a set of what ifs, and there's, you know, there's gonna be some extremely painful things. You know, we should work together to, if the vote, you know, doesn't pass, we should vote, should work together to put whatever, you know, level of pain we have to. It's not like we have a choice. Okay,
So
anything
we
else?
have been having conversations with the state to try and maximize any aid that we can bring back, also BOCES, just to be certain that we are at the maximum amount of aid that, you know, we should be getting. Our transportation aid was very low in the first run, so we've been pushing back on some of the numbers to try and also, you know, be certain we know exactly where we are. We also, like Elliot said, have been adjusting numbers as we get new information. The initial projection of our health insurance increases, worse than we had initially, worse than what it ended up being. So we're making adjustments with every little bit of good news and trying to, you know, put one more position back in, and we're doing what we can with the information we have at this point.
I mean, the meeting, you know, I said it at the last board meeting, the meeting with Dee Dee Barrett and some others. They, at least my view of what they're saying is, hey, we did good by you, you know?
And they think that they did.
Right.
Because foundation aid is the largest portion of the aid that we get from the state. But there's other, you know, parts of aid that are just as impactful in certain areas, or, you know, not necessarily applicable to other things. For example, pre-K aid. I think our number for, I don't remember it exactly, but the number for pre-K aid is way inflated, right? They give you this number, this is the max you can get from the state. However, in reality, we get $5,400 per student. So unless we have enough students to get $5,400, all the way up to that 280,000 or whatever it is, we're not really getting that, right? So we have to be super conservative when we look at the numbers that they send us, while knowing exactly what they truly need.
I have a question. I think it's slide 8 with the 3 retiring
Yeah.
teachers. Are these, and if you can't answer this in public, that's okay. Is that possible not to replace them because of
We have plans
Student-
for being, yeah, we have plans for how those will be.
Okay, so it's not like a course we've been offering, say, at the high school that
Correct,
we won't be offering. Any,
correct.
okay,
At this point in time.
at this point, right, yep, okay.
Carolyn, just so the public knows, do we have any sort of flexibility on the insurance? As far as shopping it or doing anything else like you could in the, private sector?
Well, we do have the ability to do that, but we belong to an insurance consortium, which tends to keep the cost down. We do have other plans that are no longer offered to new employees, but we have a couple of people here and there that are still on those plans. Those tend to be the highest increase at this point.
Yes.
But again, it's so few people that, the cost is really not going to make a difference.
It's just one of the bigger lines.
Yeah,
Yeah, certainly.
yep, it is.
We were looking at an 8.5% increase in the initial projection. And that number is to be settled in the next 2 weeks. So we're hopefully gonna see a couple of points come off of that, which can then be shifted to the things we don't wanna lose in our budget.
And that's the piece. So much of our budget is tied to, employee benefits and the cost of doing business that we don't have any wiggle room, right? We have to pay those costs.
Anybody else? All right. Go next one. Next is the capital project.
So following our last board meeting, the board asked for the facility subcommittee to convene and make a recommendation for scope packaging for a capital project vote on May 20th to happen in parallel to the general fund vote. Upon meeting with the committee, we make the following recommendation. We're proposing 2 capital project propositions. The first proposition being the general fund budget. So we want to be very clear about the structure of our ballot and vote in May. So prop 1 being the general fund budget that we just finished talking about, we're proposing 2 capital propositions. The first being the comprehensive scope of work for Millbrook Middle School, major components being the roof itself and the heating and ventilation system for this entire facility, as well as some ADA improvements and a full energy performance contract scope of work as well. The cost of that being 32 cents for every $1,000 of full assessed home value. And again, this is an estimate not based on STAR or any other exemptions, veteran or firefighter or any of that stuff. This is just a very basic way to calculate it against your tax bill. We included the Millbrook High School HVAC system repairs and efficiency upgrades. The prevailing thought there is the impact to taxpayers would be 5 cents, so an additional nickel for that $1,000 of assessed value. But one of the things that keeps coming up when we get community feedback about previous votes is, how did you let it go on this long? How come nothing was done sooner? And the committee felt that by bringing Millbrook High School forward, in addition to our largest need building, it's our second largest square footage building. And it's our attempt to sell the community, we hear you. This is us trying to get ahead of things while there's still only a nickel per thousand before something gets out of hand and the cost escalates the way that it has at our other 3 buildings and specifically at Millbrook Middle School. So if you put those together, 32 cents per thousand for the middle school scope and another extra nickel per thousand to add the high school to it. What you will notice is that, again, for those that haven't maybe heard this message before, maybe hearing this for the first time, we have to bring forward the full scope of work that we intend to do. At the middle school, that number equates to $37.8 million. However, between cash, retiring debt, and aid coming from the state, the net expense to the taxpayer that fourth number down is $8.7 million. That's what the 32 cents per thousand would be paying. That's the only thing that's going up on anybody's tax bill. The rest of it being absorbed by cash on hand, reserves, retiring debt, and state aid. So by front loading everything up there, we have $8.7 million that we need to cover, and that's where the 32 cents per thousand comes from. If you look at the chart below on the left, you'll see that the majority of the high school scope of work is actually consumed by that energy performance contract, and that's why it would only cost our taxpayers an extra nickel on top of the middle school expense.
Elliot, to give an example, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for a $500,000 home, that would cost $185 per year.
It would be, oh, get my calculator, 37, what was that, the home value?
Yep. For Prop 2, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to give an idea,
Yep.
it would be $185 a year, $500,000 property.
Yeah, and again, to your point, Chris, that's $185 a year for a home that's assessed value is $500,000.
Yeah.
Not necessarily your market value. We want to make that distinction.
Yeah.
Quite often, your assessed value is not keeping pace with your market value, especially in the market that we've had in the last couple of years.
And I know you said it, but doesn't hurt to say it again, people that have star would be less than.
Correct. This is completely irrespective of any star. So most of our, families with kids in the district have, if it's your primary resident, you have at least enhanced star. A lot of our seniors on fixed income would have, would have basic star. Our seniors on fixed income would have enhanced stars. And so they would be paying even less. If anybody that has a veteran exemption or a volunteer firefighter status exemption, would be paying even less. Okay, so the second capital proposition would be Proposition 3 on the ballot. And that would be for Elm Drive Elementary School and Alden Place Elementary School. Again, you'll see lines 2 and 3 are blank for both of these because we're gonna put all that cash and reserves front loaded to the biggest ticket item we have, which would be the middle school. But this is essentially a parallel scope of work for both buildings, replacing at least one boiler in both buildings and doing a full heating and ventilation upgrade at both Elm and Alden.
Now, Elliot, it's important to point out why it jumps to 0.63, whereas it was 0.37 on the previous screen. I'm just saying Prop 3 is a lot more expensive than Prop 2, and the reason
Correct.
is because we're using all of the, I just think that, we questioned it at first, people at home were probably wondering why it goes up.
Certainly, and what I will say is there's a lot of numbers on the screen, so I want to direct everybody's attention to the total cost of the project. The new debt service line on the project. So for Elm Drive, it's 9.3 million. For Alden, it's 8.9 million. I'm gonna jump back one slide because the new debt service tax impact at the middle school is 8.7 million. So you can see those numbers are kind of close together, which is why we're at 32, 33, and 30 cents per thousand for all three props. Even though the bottom line number is much different, the impact to taxpayers is relatively consistent. With the high school being the outlier, most of that, it's minor by comparison, and most of that work is gonna be cost neutral because of the energy performance contract. So, yeah, this proposition would be 63 cents if you were to do, both scopes of work together. So if Props 2 and 3 both pass, it's kind of a round number, it's an even dollar per, assessed value, on 1,000 on the home. So for that $500,000 home of assessed value, this would be $100, $500 a year, I'm sorry.
And that would not kick in next year, that's gonna be.
Thank you for reminding me, David, yes, so we've said this at many different sessions. We don't charge it if we're not paying it, so if the district is not incurring that debt, we will not be levying those taxes. And that's also part of the reason why we front load retiring debt, state aid, and cash on hand and cash in reserves, so that we can use the money we have. We already have tax dollars on a shelf, essentially. Because the state is protecting our taxpayers and their money, we have to ask the taxpayers to use the money we already have. That's why we need everybody to authorize the full amount of the project's value, even though we're not charging the taxpayers for all of it, because we need their permission to use even the money we already have before we can ask for any more of it. At our current estimation, should this vote pass in May of 2025, the earliest we would see any of that debt incurred would be 2027 or 2028. again, depending on the project approval cycle and the construction cycle. So we are asking our voters to authorize something that may not hit their bill for the next 2 to 3 years. We've also had people ask questions about, is this a good time to take on debt? The market is volatile. The Fed is doing what the Fed is doing, and we hear all that messaging, and that's why we want to say two things. Number one, reiterate what we just said. We don't take on the debt this year or even next year. And the other piece of that is our financial advisors are constantly monitoring the markets and looking for opportunities to refinance any of our debt, including new debt that we would take on as part of these projects. The other piece of this is, on the debt piece, you know, we have built up $12 million in cash and reserves over the past 7 to 8 years. So when we tell our homeowners and our taxpayers that this is the tax impact to them, the assumption that we're operating under is that we don't have any more money to contribute to this project over the next 18 years. And then that's hopefully not the case, right? We would hope that at the end of a budget year where we have some sort of fund balance in excess of our 4%, when the board gives us our marching orders on how to allocate those monies to reduce that to the 4% maximum, we would be able to put any cash on hand that we come up with over the next 10, 12, 15, 18 years towards this debt service, which would further reduce that tax impact.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out, we did it this way, and we decided to do this way, because obviously middle school is the most important, largest school that we have. Without this building open, we would cease to exist as we do today.
Chris, explain who we is,
The capital project committee,
the committee,
yes.
correct?
So, you know, and with that being said, as Elliot mentioned, the high school is the second largest school. They're kind of the pillars of the district, as we would say, and, you know, for the small additive of this, we decided to add them together. To do it this way. We don't want to have 4 or 5 different props. We want to try to keep it as clean and simple as possible for the, you know, not to confuse the voters.
Any questions, comments?
Yes, first, for the committee, is there any reason the committee chose not to share this on board docs ahead of time with the non-committee members of the board till tonight?
No.
No.
I think it was because it was intended to be a discussion.
Okay, but the committee which is their job, is fully aware of the discussion. I cannot make out, it's the first time I'm seeing it.
Well, we met on Friday, and usually it's an open discussion. We bring our proposal to the public, to the board. So I'm not even sure if it's something that would be normally added to Word docs. I don't know. But we pretty much crammed in to get this done before the meeting.
Okay.
No, I shouldn't say crammed. I mean, this is something we've worked on for 3 years now. So it's not necessarily
Which is
cramming.
my second,
We just wanted
it looks like the same rebundled material that's twice been rejected by the public.
Well, you know, as well as everyone, Elliot, Howard, I mean, there's nothing really we can take out until a fully functioning district.
There, the ADA portion of the middle school, while I agree, should be done. It's more cost effective to do today. $1 million elevators could have been removed. I'm just saying. I'm not saying I'm not supporting it. I'm just saying,
Understood.
and so don't tell me that there's nothing you could have taken out.
Well, I mean, to that point, we could not do the HVAC system, but then we'd have to tear apart the roof. The
No,
next time we
I
could-
agree, the HVAC system.
I'm just saying to your point, people
Oh,
looking
true.
at it might think the same
All
way.
right.
I have a question for the capital project committee. So
Facility.
I'm sorry.
It's facilities.
I'm sorry, facilities. You discussed that you would put it in 3 props again? Was that the decision?
No.
Well, Prop 1 is the
Oh.
budget.
Top one is the general fund budget.
But 2, I'm making it into quote unquote 3 in that it is not
It's
all
yeah.
in,
It's the secondary schools and the elementary schools.
okay. And
Versus all in one, yes, because I mean, there are a lot of people that, you know, know that the middle school needs to get done, and that's top priority, and we've always said that that's the number one priority. So we wanna give the voters the option, you know, if they, I mean, this would clean swoop, pretty much get all of the really pertinent. I mean, put it this way, if Prop 2 passes and Prop 3 doesn't, we'll be coming back for Prop 3 within the next few years, because it's work that absolutely needs to be done. But Prop 2 is like, needs to be done tomorrow.
Well, it actually needed to
Well,
be done
needed to be done
already,
a year and a half
Right,
ago, yeah.
right.
you know, because we're limping along day by day here with new leaks, even when it's not raining.
But the thing to remember is, without the middle school, we can't function.
Right.
If something was to happen, and I don't mean like, geez, we have to give up our, a closet, or, I mean, we're talking about not having enough space in the buildings. If the middle school somehow went down, like we're not allowed to use it,
You already did once.
there's water pouring down the hallways, and the ceilings are falling down, and it's dangerous. We could not take our students and put them anywhere else in this district, because the middle school is such a big geographic part of the district. So Proposition 2 is to make sure that we can continue to run. There's been other discussions about, what else could we do? But like I said, if the middle school goes down, I don't know. I don't know what we do. Start holding classroom, have our classes in the gymnasium with little cubicles, and I don't know. But without the middle school, we're in really deep trouble. The question keeps getting asked, why did it happen? Why did it take this long? Why didn't you do something? For the longest time, the district tried to run with a lot of, hey, what's the cheapest way we can do that? What's the cheapest way we can do that? And that was the way it was done. Well, after a while, if you continue to use plywood and cut holes in the side of the building to put a window air conditioner in, you're just crushing the long-term viability of the district. So anyway, I just want people to understand, this is not about cosmetic changes. This is not about, making it, so the kids never have to have the temperature above 71 degrees or, this is about keeping this place functional.
Functional with in-person learning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's the priority.
that is enough, yeah, I mean. Anyway, okay, any other questions?
I have one more. So Elliot, just to be clear, out of so for MMS and MHS, it's approximately 41 million total for both, right?
Yes.
The tax impact after taking away all the aid and capital reserve, which is what's giving us the 37 cents for every $1,000 of the real property value or assessment, is the 8,700,000 for MMS and almost 1.5 million, so roughly 11 million is the tax impact. Everything else will be covered out of that 40 million in layman's terms.
It's 10,665,570.
That is the total tax impact. Everything else will be covered through some sort of aid and capital reserve,
Correct.
not at the taxpayers.
And that's both props.
Yep,
2 and 3.
well, that's
Well,
that's.
that's-
No,
That's
that's
two.
for two.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
two.
That's for two.
I think if that could be just made a little bit clear, maybe like highlighted differently or something.
Yeah, we had talked about our cover page being total cost to taxpayer, and
Okay.
then the impact on the taxpayer.
Okay.
Like, cause I think that's what most
Yeah.
people wanna know right away.
Well, and I think that there was so actually, we had met as the community information group and we were able to hear some questions from the community. One of those being, if all you need is $12 million of new taxes, why are you asking for 43? So it was a great opportunity to hear some of the misunderstanding that's out there, right? So we were able to explain that voters need to vote on the total cost of the project, the money that we plan to spend, right? And that's inclusive of the aid payments, the cash we have in reserves, the additional cash on hand from the fund balance generation. Any of the EPC, the retiring debt, we were able to go through all of that and explain that when you start with 43 million and you take that off and you take that off and you take that off, the only new taxes that will be leveraged is that number, right? So when we were able to explain it in that way, it was really able to be understood better. So once we have the approval from the Board of Education for what we will be going forward with, we plan on making some, like social media, just short videos explaining what people will see on the ballot. Because I think that's part of the confusion. Why are there so many numbers? Why do the numbers not make sense? If you only need 12 million, why you're asking for 43? Those kinds of things. So we're going to try and put as many short videos out there as we can, just to explain the really confusing parts of this. You know, like Chris said before, we've been working on this for 3 years, right? And even we kind of furrowed our brows a little bit, like, wait a second, why is that 67, you know, for the third prop? And it's really reminding ourselves that we're front loading all of the money that we have on hand into the first capital prop, right? So there's none of that other stuff taking away from the total, other than the EPC and state aid, right? So even we get a little confused sometimes looking at the numbers. Yep.
And this is a question for, so the community can understand. Chris, you mentioned the alternative of, well, just doing Prop 2 and if we did that, we'd be coming back in, I don't know, 1, 2, or 3 years with Prop 3. So why not do that now?
I think
Because
that-
it will be so much more expensive.
Yes, plus I think we're guilty of what we're being charged of as far as waiting too long to get things done. You know, not only will it cost more, I'm sure more damage will be caused.
Yes.
And the cost will increase.
Yes.
So it might not be 1 year, it may not be 2 years, it may not be 4 years, but it's something that needs to get done, you know, in the immediate future.
And we saw that with the roof at the middle school. 2 years, 3 years ago when we started this process, we didn't have the damage that we're sustaining weekly, monthly now, with that full saturation penetration.
Yeah, I mean, there's changes on a daily basis to the condition of this building, literally.
Anything else?
We just need the board to let us know if you want us to package this formally for adoption in parallel to the general fund votes, since they will be on the same time.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, and I understand Chris' explanation why it's been 2. I was of the position of hoping it would be in 1. But if the capital facilities committee, thank you, feels that way, I support that.
Howard?
Abstain.
Chris?
It is all needed. My concern, but this is up to the voters, so voters will just let them speak as they did in the past. I don't want to make a decision and say, well, let's not do Prop 3 for fear that it won't pass. I mean, it is all needed. So I think if we get the information out there, the right way, people will understand. So I'm in support.
Yeah, Prop 2 in the middle school is absolutely necessary. And as soon as possible, Prop 3 is also completely necessary. We just got a tiny bit over here or there, but not enough to push it on.
And I would say to Dina's point, I mean, ideally, one prop would be best. But I don't know if we can risk that as far as that goes. I'm optimistic that a lot of people know that at this point and they'll vote for it. But hopefully if that's the case, they'll vote for both props. We just can't risk it not happening at this point for the immediate, for the prop two. So it's yes.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add to all this, and we've been doing it, you know, again, back to the question, why did this take so long? Why is it, you know, what were you doing? Why were you paying attention? For the last 4 or 5 years now, maybe 6, we have made it, the Board of Ed has made it very clear that this is on the responsibility of the administration to make sure that not only do we get all this stuff, you know, put together and everything is back to working great, but that 5 years from now, it's still working great. That you're doing preventative maintenance on these things, that you're asking for the capital. You're not saying, geez, it'd be, you know, maybe we put some chewing gum and some duct tape and it'll last another 6 months. This is the responsibility of our administration to ensure that we're staying out ahead of this. And we all know stuff doesn't last forever. It breaks, but we have to stay out ahead of it. So with that, yes. Okay, so that's 6 yes, 5 yes, 1 abstain. Okay,
We'll prepare accordingly.
all right, very good. Thank you. Oh, that was next. Do we have any questions from the public? Do we have anybody listening online? Question?
Nobody.
All right. Facilities committee report.
I think we should.
You wanna do it again? Okay. Wellness committee.
The wellness committee met, the wellness committee met, a week ago now. And discussed the tri-annual review of our wellness policy that took the majority of the meeting. It's pretty comprehensive, but it does need to be done at least once every 2 years. And so we did that for the majority of the time and made, sort of an action plan to improve anything that was missing from our policy. Some of those items will be going to the policy committee for review, but we updated anything that we could in terms of things that needed to exist in parallel.
Has any of the governor's latest, temperature thing, the cell phone thing, all of those does that reach into the wellness committee or who's?
Not as of yet. So the cell phone bill is, a bill at this point. I did get, a phone call from someone the other day about my opinion on the cell phone bill. A member of the governor's admin, I guess, I'm not sure what her position was. And so in addition to my thoughts on cell phones, I made sure that they understood exactly how I felt about the current state of our state aid. And so she was probably regretting calling me. But yeah, so far none of that has actually come through. And the solution to the pushback from the heat index bill was to add the words where practicable. Noting that they've been getting a lot of pushback on both of these things from unions, that the unions are pushing the cell phone bill, that the unions are pushing the heat index bill. So we added the where practicable, like if you can't make it happen, you don't have to do it in terms of closing the building. So, I don't know who decides what's practicable.
A lot of
Definitely
effort
that's-
wasted. All right, any other questions on that? All right. Enrollment is there for your, any questions on enrollment? Incident report. I don't know if there's any general questions on the incident report. Future agenda, items, you guys know that deal. So with that, I would, ask for a motion to go into executive session. Before I do that, we, when the meeting is not over, just because we go into executive session, when we come back from executive session, we're back in public session. If we've made any decisions in executive session, the motions have to be done in public, and that will be handled after we return. With that, do I have a motion to go to executive session? Go to second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Yeah, very good. All right. Do you wanna, anybody need a few